Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Hillyard, and this is our second interview with Astro Coffee. I'm joined with Rav Chahal, and our interviewee today is Daniel Fiverson, who is an evolutionary astrologer. And so let's see, shall we just dive in, start with your chart and what drew you to astrology and go from there. So, how, and also when you're talking about what drew you to astrology, you might also tell us how what in your chart speaks to that.
Okay. Well, it's hard to really remember the beginnings because I was, pretty much in my formative years. Clearly a child of the 60s. That's when I came of age. And I think that I always had an interest, which clearly, probably comes from some ancient life in Egypt or Assyria or Sumeria. Astrology just resonated with me in some way. I would read newspaper horoscopes. Uh, and one day I wandered into a Brentano's bookshop and I knew I was a Leo. And there was this big coffee table size book, and there was this huge Leo, lion, Leo the lion on the cover. And that was it. I mean, I picked that up and I started to read it. And it happens that it also became the connection between me and my first wife, because I had a business and she had. It's a long story. I won't go down that road, but she came to me in my office, and the book was on the table, and that started the conversation, and it lasted, went on for 25 years. Um, so astrology was something that literally I brought with me into this lifetime. It was just a natural inclination, just like being type O and living, my ribeye steaks and stuff like that, which is normal. And I hope everybody's not a vegan because I've tried vegan and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But but at any rate, I took my first astrology class at my Saturn return, and I guess I was 18 or 19 when I actually, started to, read about it and follow it. But at my first Saturn return, I was really diving into it. I was reading Dane Rudhyar, and I was ready to become a professional astrologer in those days. Um, the other event that happened at that time was my son was born. And so, like the two of them I said to my wife, I wanted to be an astrologer. She said, that's not going to happen. So, um, but I never gave it up. I have had close friends in those days back in the 60s who introduced me to the I Ching. And a few years later, I encountered tarot. And that really became, foundation for me in terms of understanding the world around me. I have woven in and out of consensus and I guess spiritualizing lifestyles my whole life. I've gone through different cycles. Um, I finally landed, where I am, but I this is my fourth career. I was in a family business, which I thought was my dharma. Um, and I came to that kind of went away on its own, mechanics. And I came out here to Santa Fe 28 years ago, and I totally retooled and I became an IT professional, which is also a Uranus 10th house uh, occupation. They're both technologies. Um, but again, it's like life has a way of um, having taking its own course. The river goes where the water takes it, and my life is the same way. I tried to follow the course, but the water was clearly taking me in another direction, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, I guess about it must have been around 2008, 2007 or 2008. I had a friend from another metaphysical connection that I had, a frequency healing program that I was part of. I was a coordinator, and she came to dinner. and she started to talk about a life path reading that she'd had. And it turned out it was with Kim Marie. And it was only a couple of weeks later that I contacted Kim Marie. I had my first reading from her. It was absolutely life-changing. I had my second reading maybe a couple of months later, and that was it. I mean, it was pretty much a done deal at that point. I was still not able to pull myself out completely, instantly from where I was and what I was doing. But again, the circumstances of my life. See, Rob, I believe that we dream our lives. We maybe we can say we plan them or we chart them or somehow, but it's a dream. And that depending on how much emotion and intention we invest in that dream is the determinant of how that dream unfolds and the rapidity with how it unfolds as well. And that's really what happened. I followed a dream. Um, I, I walked away from something that, was actually much more lucrative than being an astrologer, but I didn't care. It wasn't about that anymore. Um, I went to, it was in 2000, I think 2010, 2008. I went down to a fair in Albuquerque, a psychic fair. And I sat there with my iPad and had my little banner up, and somebody sat down in front of me, and I read for her. And when I was all done, she looked at me and she said, "Nobody's ever told me that before." And then she told me she was a medical intuitive. And then I said to myself, if you had told me that first, I might not have read for you. So that's, and I've never looked back. And I still hear that time and time again from people that what I tell them about their charts and what's happening to them, no one has ever told them. And I just run with it. Um, I have learned through the years to gauge how I work with each person because everybody's different. Some people, want to know where asteroids. Some people don't know what an asteroid is. Some people don't know what anything looks like on the chart. Others want to know what every single thing in the chart means. So that's how I really go into my reading, and I use an intake form. And I also learned that from Kim Marie. I go in there, I have a handful of basic questions about the context of a person's life. Their mom and dad, their siblings, what did they do? Where are they on a spiritual perspective? And then when I sit down and I look at the chart, I can begin to understand who they are because uh, one of the things that's an imperative thing to understand about anybody's birth chart is that there are 1,001 ways that it can be expressed. Maybe more than that. That's actually, an oversimplification. We have to know, who was the person, what was the context of their life, and it's one of the things about evolutionary astrology that really uh, sets it apart and makes it work is Jeffrey Green's concept of evolutionary states. Uh, I have yet to have somebody who's in a consensus state come and sit in front of me and want to know about their chart. They've probably been to church or temple or wherever, and the leader of that congregation, said that that's the devil or that's pseudoscience or so we end up we really are therapists, but instead of being therapists with people who are alcoholics, we're therapists for people who are looking to understand themselves and grow their consciousness and evolve. Um, and that's really the process. That's the work that we do. But the most interesting thing that I find in my work is that I attract people who have some of the same issues that I had and worked out or I'm still working on. And there's this synchronicity to it. Like attracts like. So that's my open it's my opening statement for you guys of my
Well,
path through the years.
and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about your eighth house, 12th house, and Rav can, pursue that because she also, has a similar configuration. So,
Well, Yeah, well, the eighth house, what jumped out to me, first of all, the sun in the eighth house straight
Moon.
away, right? And I also have the sun in the eighth house as well as Saturn. But then for yourself, Daniel, it's that Pluto in the sorry, not eighth house, 12th house. Clearly, I'm clearly half asleep right now. The 12th house. That's the
Mercury
Neptune coming
pre-shadow. We
in.
were talking about that too.
Mercury retrograde pre-shadow is really kicking in. Right. So again, the 12th house, the house of, spirituality, dreams, visions that we talk about, and also the oneness, the collective oneness. And your sun in the 12th house straight away kind of shows a soul whose personality, egocentric identity is very much, connected to the whole. And the Pluto in the 12th house, a soul who's done this in previous lifetimes, like you mentioned. You said, possibly Egypt, you know, in the Middle East, far as doing astrology. Straight away, I can definitely sense that from you. Your South Node is in Scorpio in the third house. You've that interest will have been with you from the moment you were born, just about life, the mysteries of life. Have you been interested in, I want to say, history in terms of what's been blocked in history, I would say, like, the
Yeah, oh,
Babylonian
yeah, yes.
history of,
I love history. There's no question. I love history. Um,
yeah,
I, I absorbed a lot of it. American history, European history, and as much of it that as came into my awareness, I would focus on it. And yes, the 12th house Pluto is a rough edge because it's the way Jeffrey puts it is you feel like you're standing on a precipice. And that precipice it kind of looms, it returns to you more than once in your life. You don't get a chance to just have to do it once and you're done with it. Um, when I came out here to Santa Fe in 1996, I went up to we have at the time we had this really famous flea market up there, which is not no longer operational. But there was a woman, and she's still around, who would just collect odds and ends of things, and paint something on it. And there was this. It was the top of a paint can, and she put a couple little doodles and let's see, hung some things off of it. But basically, what it said is that when you come to the edge of all that you know, you stand at the edge of all that you know, um, and I want to make sure I get this right. When you come to the edge of all that you know, when you step off the edge, one of two things will happen. You will land on solid ground, or you will learn how to fly. And basically, that's how my life has gone. I have found myself at that precipice in one way or another more than once. And it's the eighth house events that have brought me to that precipice, but it's that 12th house that has put me in the place where I realized that I had to step forward into something else, that I had to grow, that I had to realize that there's something greater than what's happening to me that is happening and that I need to be part of, and to enjoy it, to enjoy and conjoin with it. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, it
absolutely.
does.
You know,
And
you know
that
that
moon in
Eris,
Aries, sorry,
you
just
know,
that moon in Aries, eighth house. You spoke earlier about how it's been the watery element. It's been so much water. And yes, you have a 12th house emphasis, but the moon in Aries, the fire with the water will subdue that fire, So it's been surrounded in the watery elements, but water is where the intuition is, I would say, more heightened. There's more of a connectedness in water in terms of the
right.
intuition coming through. And you've had to kind of have just surrender and have faith that the path would open up, hence the four careers that you've mentioned in your lifetime. And astrology was always going to be the final one, I would say, in terms of the one that would be more soul fulfilling.
I think that was the most conscious of all my choices. The rest of
Mm.
them, I don't know Rob, that I could honestly say that I opened myself up in some way.
Okay.
It was a choiceless awareness. I didn't have a choice. Do you understand?
Mm.
Circumstances created the event, and all I could do was literally fall into it, to fall into that precipice and hope that I would either land on my feet or learn how to fly. And in
Hence the
most
faith.
cases, it was one or the other. Uh, the first two careers, I guess I could say that I landed on my feet. For the last two careers, I learned how to fly. So, with practice, we begin to understand that this looks familiar. We begin to sense as time goes by. And the truth be told, when I was 28 years old, I wasn't ready to teach or to consult with people. I had too many years of my life that I still had to live through in order to really be able to sit with somebody else and understand what they were going through and be able to work with them. Even if I hadn't got through that particular situation, I had a handle on it because I knew what they were going through. But it takes years of life experience to really accumulate that sense of how it really works and what we need to do to get our feet on the ground. Mars, excuse me, Mars, it's upside down Mars. Eris, talk about Mercury's shadow. I had a huge gaffe yesterday in the talk. I really am an Eris expert, but that thing went right down the tubes because I got a retrograde wrong, and it was a
The
little
other
embarrassing.
retrograde.
Yeah, so I was retrograde, but it's the shadow. But at any rate, this moon Eris it's Eris that really is the undercurrent for my moon. There's no question, and it's why I've been attracted to Eris even before I knew she existed. I had a very powerful mother. I had a very strong mother. Um, my father was not really the lead player in my family life growing up. It was my mom. And she taught me a lot, and she taught me what it was, how to make your way in the world, which is what she did. She I don't have to go into a lot of details about it, but she was willing to do whatever she needed to do. She didn't even, things that you would never think of doing. She was way ahead of her time. And so she was kind of a role model for me growing up. And as a result, I have always been attracted to strong women. Both of my life partners, each one more than 20 years, 20 years and counting, are strong women, and it's just who I'm drawn to. They're stronger than me. There's no question. And it's almost as if I'm still looking for Sarah. Whatever. It's crazy. Life is crazy. There's no question. Um, but it's that eighth house event that drives those 12th house experiences. There's no question. I did a Kepler YouTube called Metamorphosis through Karmic Intensity. It's had 8,000 views already in just a couple of months. And it's because of that process in my life that I've gone through. Because to have had that metamorphosis and know what those karmic necessities were in each and every case, and that's an eighth house, 12th house dynamic. The eighth house is the rebirth. What's the word I'm looking for?
Metamorphosis.
The animal that emerges from the fire, the phoenix. The eighth house is the phoenix, and the 12th house becomes the saint, the prophet, what's the other word I'm looking for here? The savior. We work through both of those profiles, both of those archetypes, through those houses, to be able to be re-envisioned and reinvigorated and then reinvented, is really the process that goes on to save ourselves.
Well, it sounds like you've applied astrology to your own life in your learning.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, it has to work that way. This is our blueprint. This is so. I think that's what you're saying. If not, correct me. I mean, we don't really get to choose that. We can choose which way that we're going to respond with that planet. But even that, to some extent, I believe is predestined. I do believe that each of us has a destiny and a fate, and it's in our nodes. It's in the north node of Pluto here, up in that 11th house, of just individuating, of becoming me, over many lifetimes, to not really have any. Uh, in the lifetime itself, not have my hands on the wheel. I just have my foot on the pedal or the brake. You see?
Yeah. That north node of Pluto is on your Mercury as well.
Yes.
Cancer.
And so is Mercury's north node. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Um,
The communicating your voice,
right.
communities, you know, was always
But
going to be
it's
the way forward in.
but it's been the teacher. I am Hermes. I see myself as Hermes in a lot of ways. I am a messenger. I realized that a long time ago, and I have the many things that I don't know that I want to put on the recording, that were of that nature. I have been rogue since I'm 20 years old in one way or another, and I was very rogue in those early years. In a lot of ways, I believed in chemical enlightenment, Roth, and I worked for it for many years, and I whistled past the graveyard. Is the best that I can tell you. My life could have gone very differently at one point, and it didn't. Um, but that's another whole story.
As my
Um,
dad used to say, there but for the grace of God.
right. But the world has come around to the philosophy that I professed back in the 1960s and the 1970s. I mean, we're right there again. The world has come to understand that these plant medicines, have great value. And I was at the cutting edge of that, but unfortunately, it was highly illegal.
Well, yes, and rogue, as you say.
Yes, it was rogue. It's very rogue,
Yeah.
and
Well, and
it was nice.
the other thing about your Mercury is that it's the messenger of your chart. It's your chart ruler, your ascendant ruler, and it definitely has a prominent place in that 11th house, out in the world. I think I've heard it referred to as the world stage, the 11th house.
The T square has been difficult, Sue, because family stuff for me has always been edgy. Um, I don't have a big family. Um, uh, and I'm close to my kids. I have a granddaughter. My parents are gone. I have a brother, but he's 5 years older than me. We were always kind of distant to begin with. So it's always been me and my partner pretty much, and my close friends growing up. And so that Mercury in Cancer doesn't really tell the whole story. Um, I think the moon in Aries, eighth house, is probably more accurate about my own need to depend on myself and to
Mm,
develop myself, in my own capacity, in my own way. Um,
Yeah.
and Neptune there as well, and Mars and Neptune there as well. It's been, I don't want to say, abandonments or betrayals, but it's hard. I've been blindsided by people often, because I take everybody at face value, and sometimes that ends up hurting. So
Your fourth house cusp, Daniel, is Scorpio. And I often find with a lot of people that have a fourth house Scorpio, that power and powerlessness in the early childhood environment and in terms of family is very strong. And like you mentioned at the beginning, there's a soul requirement that you needed in this lifetime to have that conditioning pattern, to
right,
set you on your soul's path.
right,
And it is very much like we spoke before we started recording about how we build our family with the community that we interact with, our friends, the romantic partners that we end up with, etc. Ends up being and I want to use the word true family, soul family. That's the word that I'm
right,
looking for.
Right.
And I feel like your life journey has proven that, and it continues to prove that.
Yeah. I really see myself as my Jupiter and Sag retrograde. That's real. That's who I feel that I am. I feel that I am an explorer. I am a scientist. I am a philosopher, probably first and foremost. And a lot of it is really has to do not with reliving the past, but embodying the past and recognizing what has transpired over millennium in some cases that has great value that has been dismissed and lost. And I love to teach. I think if anything, I'm too much of a teacher. I find myself, teaching to people who don't want me to be teaching to them. So
Oh, my
that's
eye jumped right to your North Node in the ninth
North
house.
Node.
right, right. So that's something again that I've had to learn to, again, gauge who am I speaking to, and what do they really want to hear? And it's not easy because I'm ebullient, I think is the word. It just flows out of me.
Well, on that note, because you teach, are there any sort of astrology related projects that you're working on, or things that we can look forward to, or just anything you'd want to share with the audience that are listening?
I don't know that I can share all of it. I can kind of allude to some of it. I've rejoined OPA. So I'm looking to have that as a platform. I am embedded into Kepler, and there are some things going on behind the scenes um, that are unfolding. I'll just say that Kepler is in the process of creating a whole slew of new certifications. And one of the things that um, I I learned about them, and I didn't have a direct conversation with Donna Young about it, but with a couple of the other people who are administrative, and why don't you have an EA certification? And they're working on it. So that's really as far as I can go with it. They know that I want to teach, but you can never count on tomorrow. You can only live today. But I've got almost too many irons in the fire. If you look at my transit, you'll see that not only am I coming up to that Uranus return, but Jupiter is in my 10th house. I also have Pallas Athena up there on my MC. So it's like I have a lot of things are happening. It's almost too much. To some degree, I'm beginning to feel a little overwhelmed by it. Just came through a very difficult medical year for me. Um, I may not look it, but I'm going to be 76 years old this week. And for this year, I felt every day of it. Had some male stuff going on. Luckily, it wasn't the big one, but it was tremendously traumatic for me. It went on for 10 months. I've never had any. I've had no health issues really my whole life. I'm just, I'm a Virgo, so I was eating, organic food in 1967. Um, so it's like that. But it's been a very difficult year. But I came through it very well and healthier. But it was really sketchy. I didn't know where it was going or what they were going to find, and it was an area that it was totally unprepared for. But here I am.
You've got
It's all
that
good.
Pluto transit right on that cusp, haven't you, of your sixth and fifth house?
Pluto was opposite my sun. Pluto's been opposite my
Yes,
sun. Yeah, yeah. And uh, it's
it's literally
it
just
just
about there, isn't it?
yes, it's actually moving into it'll be an inconjunct before long in a couple of years. And Saturn too. I mean, Saturn has also transit. I've had a Saturn opposition, which was also difficult, and that was part of it. So, um,
Well,
but it's
let's,
all good.
Something.
It's
yeah,
all
it
good.
is,
Yeah.
it's always good. And you're about to start another trip around the sun. So a new new solar return and a new journey
Right.
beginning.
It's a whole new cycle of my life is about to unfold. And I'm just really, trying to pace myself because, my moon in Aries, I just want it all. I want it all, and I want it all now. And the world isn't working that way. Everything's taking time. But things are clearly have opened up over the past, year or two that I didn't anticipate. I guess it was part of my dream, but I didn't have that specific thing listed in my dream. I didn't know about it. Kepler is huge. I'm really happy and proud to be part of Kepler. To me, I feel that, there's a lot of astrologers out there. It gives me, a certain credibility because how does somebody know, if you really know what you're talking about? And it has really changed the number of readings, the flow of readings that I've been getting. Susan's not as happy about that because we're both retired and we kind of have an agreement that we're going to be at nature or go somewhere or do stuff. But she thinks I'm too much of a workaholic. I can't let go. But I'm just, it's so that I'm between a rock and a hard place with this stuff. If this had happened 20 years ago, I think the transition would have been a lot easier for me, a lot smoother. I was not prepared for I was not prepared for it. They say, you're never prepared for success, and success is much harder than failure. Failure is easy. Success is hard. So
Yeah. Well, and that would maybe be a good segue into what advice would you give people who are wanting to become professional astrologers now and, maybe are at a different time in their life?
Follow your dream, whatever your dream is. If you want to be a ship captain, if you want to, be a carpenter, you want to be whatever it is you want to do, follow the dream, your dream. Life is a dream, and this is, I think, is the one of the most important things I've encountered in the past year or so. I've become what they call an innernaut, where our dreams, I'm really working on the dreams that I'm having at night and trying to pull them together in the morning, and because that's real. That's more real than what happens, right? This is real, but this is not real. Our inner world is much more real than our outer world. And our outer world is a projection of all kinds of things. Our inner world does not have those distortions of the projections. So when we can begin to understand what it is that we're dreaming, literally, and what our dreams are telling us, we can actually get centered in our outer world in a way that was not possible before. It's called lucid dreaming, dream yoga. There's a lot of names for it. And it takes a lot of mastery, it takes a lot of work. And I know that this is not an answer to your question, but what I'm leading to is that we have to awaken our awareness to recognize what is coming up for us, to rather than automatically pursuing, something that we think is what we want, or what somebody else tells us what we want, or we want it because somebody else has it, or all those reasons, to find that place in our heart, not our head, that is going to steer us forward, because they're both intelligent organs, but our head is going to say, well, you have a car payment, you have a mortgage, you have responsibilities, you have this and that. Our heart will say, fuck it, man, just get on a plane and go to Paris, So go sit in the Jus de Paume and look at the Renoirs. We have to follow our heart. But it takes us many years to recognize that that's where our truth is, because we live in a consensus world and surrounded by influences that are almost impossible to overcome on our own without some kind of help or some kind of metamorphosis or critical event or crisis that shows us that we have to find a different path. But that's what life is about. We need our path. We cannot dismiss our path, whatever it happens to be, and we have to follow it. We have to follow that trail through the woods to see where it leads. But we also have to recognize that we are dreaming those woods, and that we do have the ability to change everything. But we have to really come to some understanding that that's really possible, that we're not at the mercy of the world around us, that we are big and the world is little, as opposed to what we were taught our whole lives, that the world is big and we're little. It's the exact opposite. It's our consciousness that shapes everything that happens to us. And the more conscious we become and the more we're aware of what our authentic needs are, the more we can achieve our dreams and do the dreaming. But if for somebody who wants to become an astrologer, I would say really to sample different venues, different avenues, because astrology is a big word. And astrology works. All astrology works. I don't want to say that evolutionary astrology is better than horary or better than Vedic. I mean, that's foolish, because each of those things works differently for the person who's working with it and for the person who's come to you and needs those answers. They all have different answers. So to really at least, sample or learn about different kinds of astrology. However, if you go to an astrology event and something in that event awakens you, seize that moment. Carpe diem. That will tell you something. Again, trust your heart. And then it just totally invest yourself in study and in learning and in as much as you can possibly absorb in the time available and the resources you have available to do it. And to recognize that it's going to take, several years. You're not just going to be able to, pick up Jeffrey Wolfgreen's, Pluto, Journey of the Soul, and the next day start to do readings, because you're going to first have to read it at least 4 times.
Yes.
And
True.
and then you're going to have to sit with at least 100 other people and try and get them to understand what it is that you gleaned from it, and then go back and read it again. So
Can I tell you? Can I tell you the truth? So when I first picked up Jeffrey's book, of course, blew me away. I read it and I decided I wanted to be an astrologer. There was something just within me. And I think after the first 2 years, I sat down to do the first coursework piece, sat down and broke it down and just went, oh my God. And literally had to step back and make it bite-sized. I actually started the coursework 11 years after I started studying. That's when it felt right. I agree with everything you've just said in terms of the material to absorb the information. And like you said, you will read the books once, twice, 3 times. You'll pick up something different and new information will come through. And it's very much, we all have our timing, and you'll know. I tell people who want to become certified, you will know when it's the time to choose, do the coursework pieces, do the, the exams or whatever you have to do to get certified. But push through. There's no rush. It's sort of like now I find a lot of people saying, well, I'm just going to become an astrologer, I'm just going to start doing readings. That's great. But in terms of your own kind of, I don't know, just being credible to yourself and honoring your own journey, trust yourself. You will know when it's ready. You're ready to be out there in the world. And yeah, I'm just laughing at the fact that you're saying that. Yeah, absolutely. It's everyone's own journey is their own pace and own level of evolution, and you'll get there. The passion will see you through. That desire will see you through. And because I personally find when I do astrology work, it doesn't feel like I'm working. It's something I really enjoy, helping others, just deciphering their journeys and helping people navigate through any difficulties. It's something I love it. Yeah.
I think it's also important to check out other writers as well. Read everything that Jeffrey's written, Mark Jones, what Dave has written, what Patricia's, all of them. And on that note, I have a complete printout of Jeffrey's courseware. And
Me too.
I go back to it and I look and what did Jeffrey say about, yada yada yada, and I will reread it because you just can't remember it all, and it's important to refresh yourself. But I've also read
100%.
I've also read Brian Clark and Liz Green and Howard Susportis and all these other authors as well, because um, it's important to be able to bring different things in. I think Jeffrey is exceptional, and I think that he's clearly the core of my work. But I bring in other major astrologers in all the time, because they also have things that they can add out, that they can build out that repertoire, that what's the word I'm looking for, uh, that compendium of knowledge in different ways. Jeffrey's brilliant, there's no way, but you can deny that. But he's also very iconoclastic. I mean, he's got a very narrow definition of how and what and why and when. And I guess in my Moon in Eris, I'm willing to push those boundaries. There's more to it. But focus on what really draws you in, to find that version of the work that really resonates with you, and to master it. You have to master it. You can't just skim it and then, but also to practice along the way, because I often have said that my greatest classroom are the people who have sat in front of me, because that's when you really see how it works. Okay. There are 1,001 ways that any chart can express itself. And so you really have to be exposed to as many of those different versions of it as possible. Themes do develop, and you will see the same themes coming out from the chart in people. Clearly, if somebody's got Pluto in the fourth house, you know that you're going to hear about some really, quote, interesting early childhood stuff. There's no two ways about it. It's not going to work any other way. But how did it work? Was it the father? Was it the mother? Was there no mother? Was there no father? There's so many different versions that we really, we don't know it, until they sit down in front of you and start to talk about it. And again, to really, also the intake form, I think, is really important to be able to get that up front. Because first of all, it saves you a lot of time in the reading. You don't have to spend, I do a 90-minute reading. You don't have to spend 30 minutes of that 90 minutes asking them all those questions. You've got it all in front of you. And by the time they sit down in front of you, you've got their chart. You know exactly where to begin and how to talk to them. The other thing that I do is I always ask everybody how to gauge their understanding of the chart. Tell me if I talk about a sign or a house or a planet, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put yourself? So I know how to deliver this information. And sometimes I'll take the asteroids out of the chart. I don't like to assume that everybody who looks at any chart, anything I work with, will know what they're looking at, and becomes too much information. They get confused. They get lost in the symbolism. Even yesterday, I have to admit that I don't know every one of those asteroid glyphs. Okay. And so if I was a novice, or if I was somebody who was not attuned to astrology, I would immediately feel underwater. I would immediately feel lost and not be able to really grasp what this person was going to tell me. So we have to gauge our delivery. It has to be geared to the person. It has to be literally custom made for that person, so that they're going to walk away from that session and say, he told me something that I didn't know, that I learned something about myself. And I've learned that if I can tell anybody one thing about themselves that they didn't understand, then I was successful. Okay. I don't
I
have to
agree.
tell them who they're going to be, what to do, how to do it. I help them find their way to do that themselves. I would never presume to tell somebody who they are, but I help them understand who they are based on their own experiences.
Yeah.
That's the way that I work.
You've got so many books behind you, I can see. And
I was
all the
checking that out
authors you've
too.
mentioned. Yeah. And the authors that you've mentioned, I've read them as well. And you're absolutely right. Just that diverse, just integrating, and you'll get pulled to whatever information will feel right for you. But so yeah, 100% agree that everybody should just be well-read in astrology. But so behind you, Daniel, I can see a lot of books. So one of the questions that I would like you to answer is, apart from astrology books, and if it's astrology, that's fine, but are there any key books that has changed your life that you would recommend to audiences to read?
The Wilhelm Baines edition of the I Ching.
Okay. Which edition?
With,
Sorry,
with,
I'm going to write this down.
without question, that I mean, there's nothing else that's going to match it in any form, shape, or description. The I Ching, it's the Bollinger. Probably seen it.
I'm sure Sue will add this to the notes.
Yes, I will add the list of authors and here, wait, let me
This is
let
the-
me stop
this
the
is this
share.
is
Let me
the
stop the share and then you can there. Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
better.
Okay, now show us.
Okay. It's the everything's backwards here. It's the Bollinger series, forward by Carl Jung,
Right.
Wilhelm Baines.
Oh.
I just totally out of focus. I know it.
It is.
Wilhelm,
Okay.
Wilhelm / Baines. One was the transcriber, the other was the translator.
Mm.
And this is the classic. I mean, this is it. There's lots of I Ching books here, but this is the go-to version.
That's a
And
big book.
you can see the shape that it's in, that it's warped. I mean, it's been in the rain. It's been in my backpack. I've carried this with me since 1967, and
Wow.
it's ancient intelligence. It's it's the whole concept of synchronicity. The forward, Carl Jung's forward itself is a huge teaching, because it's all about synchronicity and how synchronicity works. That you can horror astrology is based on the same thing, but this is the actual science of it. Why does it work? What is it about this moment that tells us something about an event that occurred at this moment? What is the connection? It's fantastic. I used to do it with the pennies. I still do it with the pennies sometimes. I used to do it with the arrow sticks. You can even do it online now. I mean, it's pretty much mainstream, but it's the #1 book. I think the other book that I think was essential in my spiritual development was the Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. I think that was probably the second book. Those two books, the I Ching came first, and then Yogananda came second. And by the time I'd read Yogananda, I was hook, line, and sinker. I was gone. I was no longer part of consensus reality. No matter what I did, or where I was, I was just it was another reality for me. It was a different way of understanding life. Okay,
Oh, I agree.
trying to think of who else really made the difference. There's so many people. I have to tell you, I didn't buy every one of these books. I've read almost every one of them, or at least consulted it. 3 astrologers have gifted me with their libraries when they retired. Yeah, which was amazing, one after another. I mean, it was just such an
Wow.
incredible thing.
That's a nice gift.
It was beautiful.
Gift and a curse. The Virgo gift and curse.
We're all
Books.
Virgos.
More
Well,
books.
Roger Woolger. Yeah, Roger Woolger. Other lives are other selves.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
is an important one. Richard Gerber, Vibrational Medicine.
Vibrational medicine. That sounds interesting.
And then I
Well-
also have read, I've got a lot of mythology. I mean, I studied with Jason Hawley for 3 years, and
Mm.
he really opened up the mythological connection between astrology and mythology for me. So I have all the major writers. Carl Karenier. He's a little hard to read, but he's phenomenal. Um, the Odyssey, the Iliad, I think, and then all the books that really go through classic mythology are important, because sometimes when I'm working with somebody's chart, like in order to explain to especially women about Ceres in their chart, I tell them the Persephone, the Demeter Persephone story, because I have found that when somebody has Ceres prominent in their chart, that either Demeter, Persephone, or Hades was a prominent individual in their development. Okay, so it was either the mother who nurtured them or didn't nurture them, the daughter who was raped, which unfortunately is more prevalent than I'd like to be comfortable with, and or the uncle or the person who was the raper. That person is in their life somewhere. It plays out time and time and time again. So when we really understand these myths, and of course, the myth master himself, Joseph Campbell.
Mm.
To really understand the nature of mythology, it's the basis. But the question that through all the years, the question that has always that I feel that I don't have the answer to is, how is it that the ancients knew that Mars was Mars? How did they know that these archetypes? How did they know that these archetypes, that there's this correlation? Okay, we accept it as fact. Goes back to Sumeria 16. I don't have an answer. I do have an answer, but it's
12th
it's
house
also
questions.
it's also way out there. Because I believe that the earth is older than itself. I believe that the pyramids were not built by the Egyptians, that they're much, much older. Göbekli Tepe blows my mind. Chaco Canyon is my favorite place in the United States, and I've camped there. It's a couple of hours from here, and it's an experience. And Canyon de Chelly as well. What I love about where I live is that the cultural influences are otherworldly, and their spirituality is beyond any Western concept of spirituality. But Chaco Canyon is a scientific mystery. Uh, there, there,
Okay.
there are less than 100 burials on that site, but yet it has this intelligence. Some of the structures in Chaco are aligned north and south or east and west. You could only do it from space, Rav. So they could not have done it standing on the
Yeah.
ground.
Wow.
So again, that opens up another whole realm of where people are not ready to go there. There's no question that people are not ready to go there. And it's true about most of the pyramids, Stonehenge. We look back at the early known developments on the planet, and we call it the Stone Age, because the only thing that has survived is made out of stone. Well, guess what we're going to be? We're going to be the plastic age, because that's the only thing that's going to survive 5,000 years from now.
And it's not going
Okay.
away
So,
anytime
but
soon.
right. So the point I'm making is that this ancient history is first of all much older than we believe or where we understand.
We've been
And
told.
there was an intelligence here. It's the cycle of the yugas. That's another important read because it correlates directly to the 24,000 year cycle of the progression of the equinoxes. It's a match. And we're all the way, we're just coming out of the yuga where we begin to go back up again. Okay. But
Yeah.
was said that in that golden age, in that primary yuga that first happened, there was no writing because people were telepathic. It was only as we digressed and devolved from that state that we had to develop writing so that we could communicate with each other. I mean, they're concepts that are beyond, they don't teach this in fourth grade anymore. But I look at an astrological chart, and what I see is a language that probably at one point everybody could read. Okay. But it's been lost, and we've learned how to read it again. These are the questions that I ask myself, that I try to understand, is to really get involved with that. But I camped in Chaco about 10 years alone, because Susan had went on a retreat up in Colorado for something that she had, actually it's longer than that, something she'd signed up for before we met. So I went with my dog in July for my birthday. And I was the only person in Chaco Canyon except me and one park ranger, and a couple of eagles, and something that came down off the mountain and stole the salmon out of my food locker. But it was the most amazing experience to be there alone. I was the only one there, and I think it was transformational in some way. It was kind of like it was a trip. There's no question that it changed me. And there are places like this on the earth that hold that energy. They're literally nodal points in the earth. And when we go there, Sedona, Arizona changed my life as well. It's
Mine
another
too.
story. It's another story. So
Well,
that's when I became an
Daniel,
astrologer. That's when it changed, actually. So when I went to Sedona, that was
yeah,
the big change in my life. Came back, and in the
I'm
7 years I was in Sedona, three parents and an older brother died. And my partner and I looked at each other and said, now's the time to make a change. But we went to all the vortexes. It was absolutely, we still go there. My son's down in Phoenix, and he comes up and he meets us. So we have to immerse ourselves in these places. Okay. And sometimes it's enough just to go up into a forest. We have to get out of ourselves. We have to get out of the city, out of the world that mundane world that we're used to. We have to go someplace that's nature, that's bigger than us in some way. And if we can find a place that's filled with spiritual vibration, frequencies, because we're a frequency. I've done frequency medicine now for almost 30 years. I was actually part of a program that did that. I mean, and I still do it. We are energy. We are life force. And when we learn to enhance our life force, that all this changes out here. When we change what's in here, all this changes. So that's what I attribute it to. I don't attribute it to I'm an intelligent guy. I know that I am. I won't even say it. I've been tested too many times. It's not that. It's not my intelligence. It's not my brain.
here.
It's here. It's what's here.
Daniel, I'm literally listening to you, and I've spoken to Sue about this off air, and when we've caught up. This whole topic that you've just mentioned towards the end is a whole different show in itself, because we could dive further into it. I totally agree with you in terms of the frequencies in different places and stuff. Over the last year, I've been to Egypt, Glastonbury. I went to the Vatican a few weeks ago. Whole different ball game of energy. I completely agree, and it's us becoming conscious that we are contributing to the frequencies around, and for anything outside to change, we have to shift inside. That's
Right.
when the change will happen. And yeah, and if anybody can, have you read The Holy Science by
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yukteswar? Yeah.
That's here someplace too.
That's still
Yes.
very heavy for me. I have to reread it. I understand the basic concept behind it, but to get the full mathematics of it, I do sit there and go, okay, what is he saying now? I have to go back to it. But I
It's
do
this
agree.
big. It's an easy read.
It's
You'll read it.
tiny.
You'll
You're
read it in
right,
one
but
night.
I have to read it. I'm like, okay, sit down. Okay, read it again. Okay. But like I said, the information will come when the time is right. I understand the
Right.
basic principle behind it, but yeah, I'm still navigating that at the minute. And my last year for me has been very much about connecting with seeing where I'm being pulled towards. And I went to Egypt last year, and I
Oh,
completely
I'm
agree.
jealous. I'm very jealous.
I'm going next year again. I'm planning to go back next year. And again, it's linking back to, at the minute, I would say it's all to do with the divine consciousness of masculine and feminine. And that's how I'm defining it, as the inner masculine and feminine, and being pulled towards the high priestess of Isis. And I've jumped into more of the asteroids now. And I haven't really used them before, apart from the ones that are very common, like Chiron and Ceres and Vesta, etc. But I'm diving into now, looking more at the Mary Magdalene asteroid that we have in the birth chart, as well as, Medusa, and because they're very strong in my own chart. And I've realized it's what you mentioned earlier about the classical information mythology. When you understand the stories, you can see its symbolism, it's symbolic, and you can pick up those stories in your own birth chart. So yeah,
Right.
astrology it still blows my mind to this day. The more I learn, the more I dive in, the more clients I work with, the information that comes through for myself as well as helping the client is always gold. There's always information there. So it's never just about the astrologer helping the individual in front. It's a two-way process that's always happening.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it's an exchange. When you said
Yeah.
Isis, I saw myself as a scribe sitting at her feet.
You have a South Node in Scorpio in the third house. That does not surprise me.
I,
Does not.
I
Maybe
was
we
a
were
sc-
there together. Maybe in a past lifetime we were there together.
I was a scribe. That was my first, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Been there, done
beautiful.
that.
Right,
All the Virgo, third house Virgo.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Strong Virgo.
this has been fun. Okay, so before we end, is there
Sue's
anything
favorite
that
question.
is there anything else about you that we haven't covered, that that we don't know about you, that you would like to tell us?
Tell the world.
The dogs in my life have been my children, as much as my children are. My animals have been in some ways closer to my heart. I love my kids. I've got two wonderful kids. Um, but the dog was always at the front door when I came home.
Yeah.
Right.
That's lovely. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Daniel, so much. This has been a lot of fun getting to know you and chat a little bit better and chatting. And thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting a Leo talk about himself.
Yes, and yes, you're our inaugural Leo as the Leo season started. We did Rose
course.
Marcus with the Mars Uranus conjunction, who's an Aries, and so now we have with Venus and Leo and the Sun going into Leo. Daniel's time to shine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, Daniel.
Namaste.